Pop A on October 7th, 2021. We're in the midst of passing Pop C, which now happens from time to time. So you probably weren't aware there's Pop A, B, C, and perhaps a Pop B minus. It's complicated and controversial. But anyway, it's not the usual way to pass a group on the right side of the lane, but anyway, whatever. I'm in the very back, and that's the point of this video, is that I'm in the very back. What am I doing in the very back? I am sandbagging. I put on a clinic on sandbagging on this ride. Now, what is sandbagging, and how do you sandbag a group ride? That's what you're probably wondering. Now, there's a certain vernacular that's come into play locally in our little culture, in our group rides. I tried to fight against it. I tried to argue for the correct definition. I lost. I've accepted defeat. Meaning that the normal definition of sandbagging does not apply so much to how we refer to sandbagging or others around me refer to sandbagging. So the correct definition of sandbagging is when you are racing in a category too low because you wish to maximize your results. That is called sandbagging. So that means that, for example, you're a Cat 3 and you're winning the B crits, the Cat 3 crits, but really you're fast enough, you should be a Cat 2, you should be a Cat 1, but you remain as a Cat 3 so that you can win, place, flex on guys, etc. That's sandbagging. Now the definition that's come to be in our group is that sandbagging is wheel sucking. And maybe to put a little finer definition to it, sandbagging is wheel sucking, doing no work, doing no pulls, and then, you know, maybe like attacking at the very end or going at the sprint or otherwise doing like a little mini flex on people. That's sandbagging in the vernacular of the pop ride and the people that do the pop ride, and it's kind of a joke. And we have a group of people that are known as the king of sandbaggers, sandbagging kings. And it's kind of a joke, you know. They're good cyclists. RG right there on the left, he jokes a little bit about sandbagging. There's a few others, Eddie, Noé, Kenneth, etc. But anyway, so I'm putting on today a clinic in sucking wheel, i.e. sandbagging. For this to have been a true, like, magnificent, art beyond all art sandbagging display, I would have won the final sprint after expertly doing no watts on the ride. I didn't do that because I was so focused on limiting my watts. I didn't even, you know, I was tempted. I was like, you know, do not succumb to the temptation to win the final sprint just because you have energy left and have done nothing. Now, I think it's pretty impressive that I did under 200 watts weighted average, Strava weighted average watts on the ride. I think it was like 193 or something. That is like super low. And I guess my normalized power might have been like 215. So normalized power is always higher than Strava weighted average power because of the way they calculate it. Strava doesn't use normalized power because I think the Training Peaks folks own some kind of patent or copyright. You know, why should that math be copyrighted? I don't know, but I guess it is, and that's why like even things like Exert don't use normalized power. So you can actually get a Strava add-on that will tell you what your normalized power is. Forgot the name of it. Anyway, I have it added on. And so anyway, the point of that being was that my power was low, and I'm proud of it. And actually, this is an important ability. And why is it an important ability? Well, this is obvious. You know, if you've done any racing, of course you know why this is obvious. Conserving energy is super important in racing. Even if you're not a sprinter, even if you're a breakaway specialist, because you don't want to be wasting your energy unless you're actually doing something that matters for your results, for the outcome. So before you go for the breakaway attempt. Make sure that you're conserving your energy and get on wheels. So I was just talking with one of my teammates up there, Gary. He's the fella in the pack kit, about 1, 2, 3, 4 bikes ahead of me on the right, white kit, red and white helmet. Anyway, we were talking about some people we know that they're at the level on the Pop A. They come out on the Pop A, not all the time, sometimes, and they sometimes don't get dropped. And here's my advice: if you're in that group, what you should really be focusing on is what I'm doing in this ride. Not exactly how I'm doing it. There are better ways to do it than I'm doing it. But what you should be focusing on is not getting dropped. And of course, you're like, duh, that's obvious. Of course I don't want to get dropped. No, what you should be focusing on is riding efficiently and maximizing your energy conservation within reason. When I say within reason, I take measures to make sure that I don't crash on the ride, and some of those measures are wasting measures, like not being exactly in the draft, not being directly on the wheel, giving myself some places, lanes, vision lanes that I can see what's up the road, trying to minimize the possibility of crashing. But in a race, guys in the Tour de France, they're not like minimizing the possibility they're crashing. So they're on the wheel. That's why they crash so much. They have, well, at the level that what they're doing, they have to, and the stakes are so high that there is really no advantage other than to completely maximize what you're doing to the benefit. That's why you have these things where, like, there's like some furniture in the road, and everyone's just barely avoiding it until the one guy can't avoid it and crash. And you're like, well, why did they take it that fast, that risky in the first place? Well, everyone is glued. Everyone is trying to maximize the draft and minimize the amount of energy they have to use, because that stuff adds up. So if you're a relative beginner, it may not be clear to you how to maximize energy savings. Now, like right now in this video, I'm not doing a very good job of it. Of course, I'm going downhill, not even pedaling, so it's not really a big deal. But really being in the draft, knowing exactly where the wind is coming from at all times, knowing which side of the group is the protected side and which side is in the wind. There are big savings to being on the right or left or whatever in terms of being in the draft. Knowing where to be in the group. It's usually better and smoother to be further up in the group, like in the first third of the group, rather than being on the back, especially if you have a lot of stops. And the stop, it's hard in the back when you have to have these, these stop signs, these traffic lights, and you get that slinky effect where you really have to pedal hard coming out of a light if you're in the back. But being in the right place in the group, being behind the right wheel, that's a huge one. If your goal is to finish the ride and not get dropped, get on the wheel of someone who's super smooth, steady, consistent, safe, that absolutely isn't going to get dropped. Preferably somebody with a big draft, i.e. a big body, or relatively big body, and draft the crap out of them. When I was first doing the Pop A ride, that person for me that I knew was like my security blanket was a guy named Neil. I knew that Neil is super steady on the bike, and no way he's going to get dropped. And he's one of the bigger guys on the ride. He's got a big draft. Just stay on his wheel, you'll be fine. Now, of course, if you don't have the fitness to stay on his wheel, you're not going to. But if you have somebody like that, this guy is safe, consistent, strong, but also isn't necessarily somebody that's going to be just jumping out of the saddle and attacking. He's going to be smooth. He's going to be in the group. You're going to be fine. If you're behind the wrong wheel, somebody that's likely to get dropped, well, guess what? They're going to open up a gap, and if you're not strong enough, you're going to get dropped too with them. Knowing where to be, it's a huge part of racing, and it's a huge part of being in the group on a group ride when you're a beginner and the group's at a higher level than your fitness. Now, a group like this can accommodate all kinds of fitness levels. There are guys that are strong enough to win some pretty elite local racing stuff here in the area that do this ride, On the other hand, there are guys that are nowhere in the ballpark of being able to do that, but they can still stay in the same group together based on the draft and if they're riding efficiently and so forth. The amount of watts that I could do in a ride versus trying real hard, going real hard, being on the front, taking more pulls, sprinting in all the sprint zones, the number of watts can vary to a huge extent, you know, potentially like 70 watts, like in terms of normalized power, for me. So keep those things in mind. What you want to be able to do is get to the point that you can finish the whole ride by drafting efficiently and riding efficiently. Not having your variable index not be too high, i.e. everything is smooth. You're not doing a bunch of 500 and 600 watt intervals. Everything is in a tighter range. You're riding smoothly. Once you're able to maximize your efficiency, stay in the group, that's when you can start to mess around a little bit more and try a few more things, and do something in the sprint zones, or take some pulls, or take a pull. For me personally, I would say the next step would be really maximize the amount of force power you put in near the end of the ride, because that way you're not going to get dropped. You're doing it at the end. For example, go really hard in the last segment. Use up all your matches in the last segment. If you've done that for a while, you're successful, do other things. I've noticed for me that if I put in a really hard effort somewhat near the beginning of the ride, it makes the rest of the ride much more difficult. And so that can be a challenge that you give to yourself. Like, I'm going to put in some work near the beginning, and I know that'll allow me to have a higher stress level during the ride, and maybe I get some extra fitness or extra adaptation because of that. So I kind of meant this to be a funny video where I make jokes about riding on the back, but I guess I really don't have a sense of humor, so I end up saying stupid, obvious things instead. Yeah, I did the Pop B on the last ride instead of the Pop A, and I was purposefully, there's a reason why I didn't want to expend energy on this ride. It wasn't just for fun. Dealing with a nagging injury, and it's one of those situations where I probably should be taking a break, but I'm not. The addiction is hard to beat, right? It's hard to walk away. It's hard to stop riding. And so I didn't really want to do a lot of work. So I did the Pop B the other day, and I'm wondering actually if Pop B was more difficult on the back than Pop A, that particular ride, because of things like gaps and getting dropped on Renner because of a red light and so forth. But it seemed in particular that this ride today was easier on the back than normal, because it's not always easy in the back. You get that washing machine effect of more accelerations that you have to put in usually, and there's more gaps that open up, and it's not particularly always fun in the back. Here we are on Parker Road. This is the east-west road. We're heading east, and this is where we almost always get a crosswind, because the prevalent winds in Texas are either from the north to the south. And today, let's see, I think the winds are from the south, yes. So look at where people are riding. They're riding more to the left. The direction south to the right, north is to my left, so the wind is blowing from the right to the left. And we are more sheltered the further we are to the left. It wasn't too bad in terms of crosswind. We're going to see the gentleman in front of me here in the white and red jersey. In a minute, we're going to get to a more open area, and he's going to be less sheltered. And you can see that just his body language, that he's going to have to put in more effort. It's going to be a bit more difficult. And you can just, it's just because of the wind, you're not getting a draft in the crosswind like you are otherwise. This is always a really fun section here. I like it. It's a good mental game of how do I shelter myself? Do I shelter myself, or do I mess around? Do I kind of give myself a challenge of moving up to the front of the group on the undrafted side, for example, or doing that and trying to take a pull, or going up on the left side on the more sheltered route and trying to get to the front that way, or whatever, forming another echelon. Trying to help other people behind, or getting to the front and trying to attack the group and put people in distress. I sometimes joke that, you know, you can use your power for good or evil, and while I think of myself as using my power for good, no doubt I've used it many times for evil, and will in the future at times use it for evil. When I say good and evil, I'm kind of jokingly talking about sort of how you're interacting with the other people on the ride. In other words, like, are you trying to cause a split in the group? Are you trying to drop guys? Versus being somebody that uses your power to kind of stitch things together, keep it in a group. One of the reasons I do a group ride is to stay in the group, because a group is safer than riding solo out on these roads, obviously. So as long as you have a few guys, you're probably okay, but you in general don't want to be riding this alone, whether day or night. So anyway, have we gotten to the little stretch here? Maybe it's, did we miss it? Was I waxing so philosophical here that I missed it? The little bit of crosswind? Maybe it's coming up here. I wasn't really paying attention. Here we're going to be passing South Fork on the right, famous for the TV show Dallas. And they're advertising that the world's biggest jump house is going to be there at South Fork this weekend for the kids, or for the adults who are really kids inside. So it's just, you know, Dallas, the show. It's just a jump house now. Anyway, how the mighty have fallen. I guess it's used for wedding venues. I've never actually been there. I mean, not that I really care. I never watched the show. My parents wouldn't let me watch the show. Not that I think I really missed all that much. Here we are going into the headwind. And versus the video last week where we had the super strong tailwind and set a KOM on this stretch. But here it's a headwind, which as long as you stay in the group, boy, you've got almost very little work to do if you're right on the wheels, because the guys in the front are doing all the work. It's easier to get dropped in a tailwind than it is a headwind, generally speaking. But as you can see, it's a pretty night, pretty sunset. We're heading into nighttime pop. Well, I don't want to talk forever. I'm sure 99% of the people who started listening have quit by now. And why are you still listening? I mean, don't you have something better to do? Anyway. Super cringy if I ever listen to myself later on these videos. I'm like, why did I talk? I've ruined the video. I'm not putting any power on this just because I'm lazy. I'd actually thought about putting the power strip on just so I could flex on how low my power is, but I don't know. Just a pretty night. Let's just leave the video to what it is and look at the sunset. Who's that on my right there? Can't tell if that was who is that? Cervello. Is that Mike? Who's got a Cervello? Will I ever be able to tell? Will he ever pass me? He is passing me. Anyway. Gosh, this is bad. Like, I'm not instantly even knowing who that is. I must know who that is. I'm just not recognizing the bike. I used to make a joke that every guy on my team looked like the same guy back before I joined the team. They all had the same names too. I mean, like, there were 3 names spread among 10 people. Anyway. Hope you guys are having fun on the bike. Well wishes, stay safe. Stay safe. Have fun. Later. Because it feels like it's on a different song.
I know, totally agree.
And it feels like almost like a better
That's
song.
right. It's fantastic.
I've got this, way back when my friend sent me like gigabytes worth of MP3s. Back before streaming stuff.
Oh yeah.
So I've got this digital album of like just Depeche Mode remixes.
That's awesome.
That's
fantastic.
I've used it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. I don't watch enough of your videos. I need to just about reasonable.
record low for power today. sometimes in the back it's not all that easy.
Especially
Yep.
on heading south. Robinson of the opera. Yeah. The energy vampire? Yeah.
sometimes in the back it's hard. Like all the lights and gaps. Because you know there is like mixed and same.